This is it, pod number 85 of the world's most bullish podcast, brought to you by the normal, usual guests, Mr. All In, aka the Trillion Dollar Man, Dr. Evil 10%, aka the People's Champ, myself, Sir Never Look, aka the Excellence of Execution, and surprise, surprise, you know she's a no-show, Mrs. No Show. No
Although,
show.
although we have had a story this week, haven't we? That from Mrs. No Show that she's orange pilled someone.
Interesting story, and I was actually, it warmed my heart that he is still doing this. The principles of Bitcoin, orange pilling.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you want to tell the story?
I was going to say I was surprised at this because I think we're having a big conversation about, oh, God knows what related to Bitcoin. And he hadn't chimed in when I saw his messages when I went down, I think, to grab my lunch. And I was just like, oof.
It was big. It was big. Like, yeah, for anyone that doesn't know, outside of the show, guess what we talk about? Bitcoin. And so,
what is it? Bitcoin boats and bitches.
Yeah. Yeah. And he just pipes up. By the way, I've orange pilled what was he? A masseuse.
Yeah. And it's a great little story, right? Because obviously the first story we've got is how to orange pill Bitcoiners, and there's a whole load of different ways of doing it in this article. But his way was, identify a problem first, right? So the masseuse was moaning about her income
tax. Yeah.
Yes, and depending on, I know what she probably was talking about. She's probably talking about VAT, if I had to guess, because I know as a sole trader, once you hit 80K, you then VAT is then owed, so you have to pay 20%. Yeah. So it's this very weird thing where you want to earn 79 kind of K. The second you go over 80, you actually end up walking back because then the entire sum is what tax 20. It's not a progressive tax. Like how, if you earn, whatever the tax is now, is it on 40K? And then if you earn 45, you hit into the 50% tax bracket, but only everything over 40 is 50%, right? It's not the whole sum.
Well, 45 and then 150 is 50% and above.
Yeah, but it's a progressive tax system, isn't it? So you're still incentivized to earn more money. You just get taxed more on that money. But the VAT for a sole trader is very interesting because it's different. When you're earning 79,999, then there's no VAT. So there's still income tax to be paid on that, but there's not an additional 20%. But once you go over that 80K barrier, because I remember when I used to go to a CrossFit gym, the guy that was running it, he had a group of members and he had to keep the number of members. And I went, why are you keeping the members at this? Don't you want to earn more? He's like, nah, I keep a waiting list. And if the waiting list gets massive, then I'll set up a whole load of new classes. All of these new people earn one lump sum, but I have to make it worth my while to lose 20%. I need to earn more than that. So I need to throw in a whole load of new classes. And pretty much I know I'm never going to get there. So I could earn more than this 80K. I probably could earn between 90 and 100, but there's no point because I end up learning less over the year because of this VAT. So she was talking about that, this masseuse going, this is awful. She mentioned even the Great Reset this is what our tax money is going towards. So she's already orange pilled herself. She's already kind of going down the rabbit hole. But then, Mrs. No Show brought up the prospect of Bitcoin. You can do it on the side. It's better than cash. You can obviously hold it. It's free from inflation. And you can choose whether you pay your taxes on it, right? Obviously, my line on it is pay your taxes. I don't think it's necessarily worthwhile not paying it. They really, really don't like it. But if you don't want to, and if you've got a non-KYC Bitcoin wallet as a masseuse that you're walking around with that's never interacted with a KYC Bitcoin exchange before, then you could very easily accept some Bitcoin payments off your customers. And there's an argument to say that the government would never know. So she's going down the Bitcoin journey, isn't she? She said she'd look it up. And
What I
hopefully,
really like about this story, and you're right, and you touched on it, is that she's had to come to this conclusion herself. So no one else has kind of, I guess, been involved. And I think that's probably a key reason as to why some people don't get Bitcoin just yet, because they're in the fiat standard world and they're like, well, it doesn't apply to me. Although they should start thinking about it a little bit more, because clearly everybody's money isn't going as far as it once used to. You know, weekly shop has increased, necessities have increased, and so forth.
But they printed it to help people, didn't they? Through furlough.
They did indeed.
So it's fine. Everyone had to be helped out because of the pandemic.
Pandemic's over now.
I saw a good debate on this, by the way, and there was a guy going. They printed 760 billion in the UK in the last 2 years. That works out at £14,000 per person. And all his question was to the Conservative and the Labour MP was, where did that money go? Because people haven't got it.
Sounds like Pierre in Canada, when he was just like, where'd that money come from?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, it's just, where is it now? Because because their answer straight away was, well, a lot went out in furlough payments. Da da da. They go, yeah, but then they obviously just spent it. They were sat at home, right? Where did it end up? They've like doubled the supply of pounds in the UK over the last 2 years. Now, when all the dust is settled, where did the money go? Because the economy wasn't running, they doubled the supply. And when you look at it, he knew the answers. Obviously, he was waiting for them just to go stumble over their words. It's gone straight to the top 0.01%. All the biggest companies have it. The big government contractors have all this money. And that's £14,000 per person. I just like the fact that he'd done the maths, obviously, and just divided it by
Beautiful.
And you just go, that's such a huge amount of money, right? Isn't it? Imagine if you got 14 grand just put in your account for the average person. It's life-changing. That's what happened over the last 2 years.
But where did you get the figures from? Because these figures in the UK aren't readily available.
That the 760 billion that was printed, you're right.
Because this is the kind of stuff which we've been hoping to find to understand how much the monetary supply has been inflated by.
Oh yeah, well the tough bit, how much they printed is public knowledge. That's very clear. They've had to get all that signed off. But off what basis? Yeah, you're guessing. We're saying roughly.
Because in America they had this and they stopped publishing it because it caused so much controversy, because they realised that the Fed printed 40% of the monetary supply within 2 years ever. So, literally they'd halved people's earnings almost and their savings almost. And so we made it disappear.
Equally, we can go to my favourite website and the US debt clock and understand how that increased over the last 2 years or 2 and a bit years from, a ceiling, and I use that word loosely in terms of a ceiling, because we know that that's risen
the debt
times.
Ceiling. Yeah. But don't worry, America's always paid its bills since 1793.
On time. Yeah.
So do we want to go to this story? So this one's
start off. Or do you want to give a rundown of what we're actually doing? I know we just jumped straight into Mrs. No Show, so if anyone wants to just click and flick.
Yeah, sure. So this week, obviously, all Bitcoin stuff. So first story is how to orange pill someone. We've then got a story from Uncle Marty. He's talking about when the money fails, so does the social fabric. We've got good old Inflation Weekly. Lebanon, unfortunately, are on another drain. Their government has announced that their currency is going to go down in value by 90% on February 1st. So it's already happened. We then got a story about Britcoin, not Bitcoin, Britcoin. We then got Ray Dalio. He's talking shit about Bitcoin, so we'll slag him off for a few minutes. We've got Craig Wright, fake Satoshi. He's got a court case. He wants some Bitcoin off some Bitcoin developers.
He's like a regular guest, isn't he? Craig Wright, unfortunately.
I'm
like Villain Corner.
Yeah, probably should ban him really, because it's basically shitcoin corner whenever we talk about him. But He
Yeah.
pretends to be in Bitcoin. That's why he kind of sneaks under the radar. But really, it's just a shitcoin version of Bitcoin. But
Yeah.
and then to close up, we've got a nice Redditor that decided to show us his 24 words in picture form, and we'll see how that played out for him on Reddit. But yeah, back to Orange Pilling. Take it away.
So this is an article from the Bitcoin magazine, and it's How to Orange Pill. It's entitled. So it goes through the writer's journey and speaking to a guy in the gym. And it's first of all starts talking about the 0.01% penetration. So it does say that Bitcoiners have a problem with actually putting across the value and why people should be looking at Bitcoin. And I think the other gym goer we met said it's obvious once you know. And I think that's the position which we're all in. You end up kind of in this toxic mindset that you can't believe no one else would get it. I mean, Mr. All-In was earlier than us, but myself and Sir Neverlook, it was a kind of like pandemic and lockdowns and the lack of economical sense when they're printing loads of money. Where's that money coming from? And that's when everything clicked into place. So we had, I think, some conversations in our group chat about this. And it was like, I suppose some of the foundations have been laid before, but it's when that event happened, which you kind of go, I get it now. That's what really had the run of events on us. And this is what it ends up concluding in this. So some of the parts which are picked out of this was some quotes. This is why shitcoins can get people into the tokens. They force pill them. Some really good scumbag marketer gains said person's trust, and then they sell them an opportunity switch. So, this could be the next big thing, the kind of gibberish. And you kind of think all that gibberish which we've read on Coinbase, it may convince someone who doesn't really know what they're looking at us thinking, oh yeah, crypto is this big word. And this one says it's got a graph. This one can, I don't know what the fuck it was doing, like the various shit which I've read on Coinbase. So his kind of conclusion, I think, spot on. Stop screaming the solution to people who don't know there is a problem. It's a silent tax, which is a big problem, which Bitcoiners fight against. It's the inflation, which is fundamentally the issue, because, otherwise they'd have to tax you like 70, 80% without inflating the money. And everyone would know there's a problem there. So they kind of got this balance where they're taxing you from your paycheck, probably like 40%. And then they got all their secondary taxes like fuel tax, council tax, VAT and everything else, which probably takes your actual tax up to about 60%. And then they take the rest of you through the hidden inflation. But he talks about how do you actually create that need? And I think that's something which is obviously worth a discussion between the three of us. But I kind of semi-agree that people don't get it till the last minute, until the walls are falling down, Rome is burning, and they're fucked. They're going, where's my money gone?
Yeah, unfortunately, I fall in the camp of you get Bitcoin at the price you deserve. I think all the information's out there, right? There really is so much government corruption everywhere, but certain people can see it. Certain people can not trust and verify, and they'll spend the time verifying, and then they come to the solution quicker. Because I was trying to figure out what led me to do it, because I went down the rabbit hole, and there wasn't a compelling event. Not really. It was just, I was in a time in my life where I did hate the government. And I think actually maybe the compelling thing might have been Brexit for me or something. But I think it was before that. I got into Bitcoin before that.
Yeah, Brexit was about 2017, wasn't it?
Yeah.
No, I think maybe even earlier than that. As in the vote, I think was about 2016.
Yeah. Because it's just one of them where I don't think it was. I think it was just my intellectual curiosity. And I had a distrust of government, and I knew something was up, and I just started unraveling this thing. But yeah, when I first found Bitcoin, I dismissed it as crazy internet money, and didn't really address it. But then it was just something on Reddit that I started reading, and then I actually then read it. I actually read it properly. I didn't just cursory glance it, go, oh yeah, I understand Bitcoin, off. It's just internet money, basically PayPal. Who gives a shit? But yeah, so I think it's you need to care, right? You need to care about the world that you live in. You need to not be an NPC. You need to not follow the herd.
First of all, you need to get it yourself, because I was introduced to Bitcoin around about 2013 as the company we all used to be at, minus one of us here. We signed Mt. Gox. So I was fully aware of Bitcoin. But then my trust levels were at minus 3,000 when Mt. Gox all of a sudden just collapsed, and I was just like, whoa, I'm not going anywhere near that. So I guess it just depends on how you get it first, because how am I going to orange pill anybody if I don't trust or get it myself?
It was also the context at the start of Mt. Gox. What was it used for? And whilst we look at it now as a successful use case, it was used for pretty much Silk Road. It didn't have anything outside of buying a pizza from the Silk Road at that point, but it was still use cases when you actually look at the progression of Bitcoin and its use and how it spanned to being a currency for El Salvador and the Central African Republic.
Yeah, and of course the narrative that surrounded Bitcoin as well at the time, which still does now. It's used by drug dealers, scammers. It's magic internet money, blah blah. When really it's the worst currency to ever do anything like that. So yeah, you don't want to really be doing that.
Yeah, and that's what I mean by, when you say, you get Bitcoin at the price you deserve. Imagine being in Bitcoin when, essentially the only exchange is Mt. Gox. There's nowhere to buy anything with Bitcoin. You can't sell anything with Bitcoin. There's no big influencers anywhere that are supporting Bitcoin. You're very much just in a very small group of technical people that have evaluated the Bitcoin code and evaluated the fact it's decentralized, the miners, the nodes, and they've gone, yeah, that is the best form of money humans ever done. There was hardly any proof points that suggests that anyone outside of this small group of developers agree on that. If anything, every single person outside of Bitcoin at that point had looked at Bitcoin and dismissed it largely as a scam. Yet these people stayed with it, put their funds into Bitcoin. And now obviously they got Bitcoin at $10, $100. So they are now super, super rich, right? But that's their reward for seeing Bitcoin when everybody, like 100% of people virtually, were saying it was a scam. Now we get to a point where, maybe 0.1% of people are Bitcoiners. And I would probably say 10% of the media coverage we get is positive. We've got plenty of billionaires that are supporting Bitcoin now. There's plenty, obviously, that dismiss it. It's still 90% negativity. There's probably 10% of the rich and the coverage we get are going, Bitcoin's pretty good. There's dozens of exchanges that are very credible that you can buy Bitcoin on now. Very safe, loads of hardware wallets, dozens of podcasts, the information's everywhere. So of course now, if you're coming in now, it's like, okay, you're probably part of the first 10%, but you're not part of the 0.1% really, not unless you go, because I think the definition of to be part of the 0.1% is to have over 50% of your net worth in Bitcoin. That's the Bitcoin maxi. Kind of almost, I think this article goes, you're a Bitcoin maxi once you tip over the 50. And most people that have come in, I think at this point, which is why I'd say about 10% of people probably have a good knowledge of Bitcoin, but they're just dipping their toes in. They have like 0.5% of their net worth in. They buy a couple of £100 and leave it on Coinbase. You're not a Bitcoiner by doing that, not really. On paper, maybe you are, but you're not here for the separation of money and state. And that's what the early adopters were, and that's what we're here for. And that's what he says here. Like, we're here for the movement. We're here to separate money from state. And to get someone to that point, it requires quite a lot of intelligence to actually even start to understand the world we live in. Because I've noticed a lot of people that I've spoken to that maybe didn't go to university or don't see themselves as investors, the second I start talking about this stuff, they just go, it just sounds too good to be true. And I don't know enough to question you properly. So I'm just going to stay away. I'm going to stay with the guys that are in suits that go on TV, because I hate to say it, but they don't even have the intelligence to be able to absorb some of this stuff and go, because the problem is it isn't actually that hard, but they don't think they're smart enough sometimes. They're their own worst enemy to go, I'm not an investing kind of guy.
But that's because it's all been ingrained in someone's head. You've been ingrained to buy Vanguard. You've been ingrained to invest in your pension. It's your only way out is to save heavily into those investments. Use your ISA allowance. You put into your pension. Someone else will look into it because they know better than you.
Buy a Vanguard. Someone else will invest that money for you because you don't have to do it.
And if you put it into bonds as well, that'll balance it. Even though you're looking at retiring in 20 years' time, it'll keep it safe over those 20 years, not allowing for the 10% yearly gains off the S&P because you're balancing it using the bonds. But that's all right because it'll be stable every year.
This is why he's the people's champ. Dr. Evil 10% is getting more and more bitter by the week, don't you think?
I'm a bitter motherfucker.
Yeah.
It was just facts, isn't it? It's just,
yeah.
The only one you missed was and buy a house that you pay off when you're 70 and you've given hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of interest to the bank.
Yeah.
Who did that benefit?
Well, the houses is a really hard one because you're kind of going rent. If you've got a family looking after, is it the rent or the buying? I think the one which is really the show one is buying a car. You should get a car every 3 years because you deserve it.
Yeah, well, cars are just out and out fiat. But buying a house is one of the biggest scams ever. That's the only reason why house prices are so high, because everyone got told to buy a house, even the people that can't afford one. Plenty of people should be renting. Plenty of people should be in houses a lot smaller than they are. Everyone is overreaching. That's why when everyone makes the same mistake, it shoves a load of money into an industry that shouldn't have it. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like, oh, everyone should buy a house. Guess what? When you do that, and if no hasn't bought a house by 25, they're seen as a failure. They're mortgaging themselves up to the hill. It's so ridiculous. So when you've got a family and stuff, you're told, if you're renting when you've got a family, that's irresponsible. You could get kicked out of your home. You don't care about your kids. So of course people buy. And then they go, yeah, but you're going to buy and have kids sharing a room now. I want kids to all have their own room. And it's fine. My mortgage guy tells me, based on what I earn, I can afford this house. You go, right, what does he mean by afford it? What's the total payable? When do you stop paying? Oh, yeah. I'm 72 or something.
It's a 50-year It's a 50-year mortgage, and you end up paying over 50% of your income just on your mortgage. So you're barely living. You can't really save. You're going to be working till you die. Yeah, it's not nice, and I definitely see your point there, the overreach, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the mass inflation, low interest, which we've seen. But kind of circling back to this, he talked around, what's that point which someone actually realizes? What's the best point to sell to someone? And he uses the analogy, that's the correct way to say it, from The Wolf of Wall Street. So about the pen, how do you sell someone a pen? And the correct answer is wait until the waiter bring the check, then pull out your pocket. Now they have a problem, and it's selling the solution. So it's that point. But that is when everything's fucked. This is when
by that point it's too late.
It's hyperinflating, or CBDCs have hit, and you can't even buy a loaf of bread because you wrote a Facebook post which criticised the WEF overlord Tony Blair.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that it's like we had literally an example from Mrs. No Show. The problem doesn't have to be hyperinflation. They've just lost everything. No. It could just be, I hate the government, they're taxing me too much, and I need a way of getting around that. And I think all this money is getting fed into a great reset, and I don't want to support that anymore. You go, well, you understand Bitcoin, right? If you understand all that, you must be a Bitcoiner. And they go, nah, isn't Bitcoin a bit? Isn't it dead? Da, da, da. That's when you go, right, got one. This is someone ripe for. You need to read the Bitcoin Standard. The place that you're at right now, you will just absorb this. It will become fact, and we've got a Bitcoiner. So I think everyone has their own personal thing. We've got a story, I think, later on, or actually maybe it's not even in here. But I saw, actually it's in the Nigeria one, or the Lebanon one. But basically the price of Bitcoin anyway, the price, their currencies hyperinflating. And
Yeah.
I think it was in Nigeria that I saw that the price of Bitcoin, it's at 23,000 or something in dollars, in USD. They're buying Bitcoin in Nigeria for $48,000 right now. So they are right at that point that you just mentioned. That's at hyperinflation, and that is a case of, all right, literally, we've had all the warnings up to this point. Now our fiat money is going to zero, literally in the course of weeks. So
doesn't that bring us quite nicely onto the next story?
Yeah, it is literally connected to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's in this article that it says it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
they're buying.
I've got to read this one on the phone because Marty Bentz is it's blocked.
I feel this this article is a bit of propaganda. Lebanon and Nigeria are fine. It's just some propaganda. There might be an issue, but it's caused by greedy corporations.
Well, it's interesting as well, isn't it? Because we were talking about this prior to tonight and off air about it being Lebanon and Nigeria, and some of the listeners may think exactly the same. You're talking about these random odd countries where it doesn't really mean anything, but it does, because as we've always said, if it can happen there, it can happen here. It could happen anywhere.
Where did that conversation go? Because you mentioned, didn't you, in the week that you were trying to orange pill someone, and used Lebanon and Nigeria, but they just came back with, it'll never happen here though.
It will never happen here because one, we have the FSCS to protect money, and I was just like, and then someone said, oh well, that wasn't the case when Northern Rock went down, and obviously, well, it was just at around about £31,000 that was protected at that point. And naturally I said, yeah, but just take a step back. If everybody was fortunate enough to have savings up to that value, do you think that they would reimburse everybody back to the place of where they were, back at 80k? But there is no magic fund that is sat there one-to-one.
So the FSCS,
yeah.
Are they a government body?
No, I think they're actually an independent. Yeah, an independent.
They sound like a government body, but my kind of like response to that is they just print money. But that goes on to a different conversation. So interestingly, I'm going through a book. Was it Economics in One Lesson? And he says the biggest mistake which everyone makes is confusing money with wealth. And this is a prime example. Like, they could print your 80 grand, they could print 80 grand times by 60 million for everyone to have in their accounts.
Yeah.
But it just means that money's worth less, and it is not wealth. That is money which you received, and the wealth is fractional of what it was worth yesterday before we made the printing. And a lot of people do not understand that.
Yeah. But it's going back to that principle of, well, we believe in this money, and it's okay because we're protected. It's like, yeah, but you're not protected by anything. It's just made up.
Yeah, and the problem is, right, that what they're talking about, using the BlackRock example is a good one, because that is an example of a single bank fucking up. If that was one trader fucked up, the bank went bust. So yeah, that's when but it's a relatively small bank. So yes, there's some insurances that could be paid out. They did pay out, and I think lots of people lost money. But yeah, probably the majority of low-income people that had money in that bank got their money back eventually. But what we're talking about here is an entire currency going bust. They take the banks with them, but it's not the banks that are necessarily fucked up. It's the central government printing of the money, and then the banks are just where the money is held. So the banks and the government have become one and the same over the last 50 years. So what we're talking about is a societal collapse of a currency. When that happens, no insurance companies will pay out. It's the equivalent of a tidal wave just smashing through the entire UK and knocking every single house down. Do you think your house insurance is going to pay out if every house in the UK gets knocked down? No, the insurance companies all go bust and no one gets paid out. And that's what we're talking about. Isn't it? We're talking about 80 million people losing all their money. Who pays that out? No one. If 3,000 people lose their money in BlackRock, they can pay that one out. They can't pay it when Barclays, Lloyds, HSBC, the whole fucking lot all go down in one day, which is what we saw in 2008. They knew they didn't have the insurance to pay everyone their money. They knew all the money had been gambled away and lost. So they went to their tried and tested method of how do we keep a Ponzi scheme of a financial system going. We just print a shit ton of money, throw it back into the system. A load of people will go bust. Loads of people lose loads of money through inflation. Their wages are worth less. Cost of goods goes up. But we'll just say, oh, we'll have 20 years of austerity, which is kind of what we had. And now austerity is a bad word, but that's how we got through the financial crisis of 2008. And so
definitely not a bad word on this podcast. For anybody that doesn't know it, look it up. So
austerity literally means sensible government spending, and for some reason people hate that word. They're like, no, we want lots and lots of government spending. You just go, you do realize they're spending your money. This isn't good. Like, unless they're giving it directly to you, they'd be worried.
Kind of going back to the Nigeria point. So we covered this, I think, 2 weeks ago. I was just digging around for the article then. So they increased public debt from 12 to 44 and 44 trillion. And they've got 46 trillion Naira in circulation. So basically made up 32 trillion Naira within a few years. So this is why they're having such big problems, because they've, what's that? 300% inflation within a few years. That is hyperinflation.
Exactly.
And they're trying to, we'll cover the other bit, but they're trying to claw back notes to try and make it disappear. But they're literally at that point where there's no return.
But their argument was that but Nigeria is no one ever cared about Nigeria as an economic society.
I want to say it's one of the biggest economies in Africa. So there's an element that I know it's not Europe, I know it's not America, but
it's one of the prospering ones for sure.
Yeah, but you got to look at it as dominoes. It's like you're never going to get the big domino America going first. It's going to be all the countries slapping down into each other. So you've got Nigeria, you've got Turkey, you've got Argentina, you've got Lebanon, you've got various other Middle American countries. You've got all the South America, Brazil are in massive debt. I think South Africa are fucked as well. Probably
I'm glad you raised Turkey, actually. Sorry to cut you off, but the recent earthquakes, it'll be very interesting to see how that pans out, because I've always said that with China, the only thing that could hurt China is China, and we're actually seeing that, or a natural disaster of some sort, and that natural disaster, whilst it may be man-made, is them, the people starving and famine over there. But these earthquakes happening in Turkey are really going to be interesting in telling, because they were already fucked with the money.
Yeah.
So how are they going to print themselves out?
This could be the final one. They're either going to have to change to CBDCs, some kind of new currency, or take the dollar or Bitcoin.
Yeah.
They'll probably. I'm skeptical about how much coverage earthquakes get these days, because I just think it's just the government just making an excuse, right? They love a reason. Their reason will be, we've got to print a load of money now to save us from the earthquake, and you're going to print it anyway. But
well, they needed to print it anyway. If you look back at the other 84 podcasts, I'm sure there will be some.
They are officially in hyperinflation. So that's over 50% in multiple years.
Yeah.
But I think we've seen some videos floating around where the prices aren't just 50%. They're like 300, 500%. So it's well and truly going along. It's just...
Yeah. I remember on one of the pods we were talking about it, because I'd spoken to some people in Turkey on a call, and they said, what you're hearing isn't necessarily what we're actually feeling, and it was hard for them.
Yeah,
get your Bitcoin.
Yeah, and there's some heartbreaking videos in this article from Nigeria, because they're doing this switch over the notes, aren't they? They've retired one set of notes and they're bringing out a new set of notes, but they're claiming there's been a problem with the printing, so the switch over of notes, there's not enough notes basically, so people are smashing down ATMs just trying to get some notes out of it because that's the money that they use, and there's not enough notes. They can't get hold of it. So Marty insinuates here that he doesn't think that's just a coincidence, that they're going, oh, printing notes is just a bit old school, isn't it? It's such a faff to print this stuff. How about we have a CBDC and we could just issue to it all digitally, and then we don't have to worry about printers and ATMs and all that kind of bollocks. We can just put it on your phone, and so who knows, maybe Nigeria.
I understand his view, but I was thinking it's more about stopping the rampant inflation, and maybe decide the way to stop the rampant inflation is by to fuck the people. But if you go into the stats of that article 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, 6% of the cash sits outside of the banks. So that is the poorer people, the people who can't have the bank accounts. So they're hoping that by cutting off that 6%, they're going to solve the issue, the fact that they've printed 300%, which is sat within the assets and the banks, which the 1% or 0.1% have got. And I just think it's them kind of doing, what's the correct term, for like a banana republic thing, where they're going, yeah, fuck you, we're going to get away with this and we're going to blame it on you. But I can see his point around the CBDCs. But I do think it's more about they're looking at the immediate problem rather than looking at the long-term WEF solution.
Yeah, I think they just want to cause chaos as well. Because obviously the people on the ground, we've already seen the revolts, the protests in Nigeria. They're very, very angry. But then if people don't have money to eat and to just do basic, just day-to-day stuff, then people end up focusing on that, don't they? And so it's kind of a good distraction technique and then suddenly when the money starts to be printed again, it's one of those where the government can go, see, look how good we are, see, we did it, you've all got your money now. And it's like what we're always talking about during the pandemic or lockdown, like someone comes up and baseball bats your legs and then 6 months in gives you a crutch and asks to be expected to be said thank you. You're like, you caused this fucking problem in the first place. At least you could have given me as a crutch. It's what they're doing here, right? They're smashing the legs out of all these Nigerians, and then eventually the ATMs will work. And
ensuring ensuring that compliance, and then therefore they're kind of hooked into that eternal cycle.
Like it's like Stockholm syndrome. Oh, thank
you,
Mr. Government.
Bite the hand that feeds you. Exactly.
Yeah, maybe they'll even go. Not only will you give you a switch of the currency, maybe we'll give you like an extra bonus bit of money, a
stimmy check.
Thank you.
And you sprinkle some stimmies. Yeah.
Where's the stimmy coming from? Don't you worry.
Hold on. If everyone gets the stimmy, doesn't it mean all the money's worth less by the exact amount you gave me extra?
Yeah.
Shut up. It's more money. It's more money.
This is the stimmy dance. I'm officially ruling. This is the stimmy dance.
I was hoping that when I read the article header, we're going to have some talk about Rome, but there's no talk about Rome. I was quite upset.
Well, what will also be interesting as well is, and I think you touched on it there, Dr. Evil 10%, is will they, it'll be one of two ways. Will they go down the CBDC route, or will they legalize Bitcoin? So I'm talking like Nigeria, I'm talking Turkey. When there's these crises that happen, you've got a choice as to how you want to tackle this crisis.
I feel like Erdogan, he doesn't want to be attached to the US. That's how I feel. But then again, he's in there. He's in their spear. So it's literally, you take the CBDC to stick near the US and they'll be happy, or you take the dollar. Yeah. Whereas Nigeria, it's unpredictable, and obviously it's ruled by corruption. And it's just, they want the CBDC because it enhances their power. But how do you roll it out to people who don't even have a bloody bank account?
Yeah.
Exactly.
You've got to go digital first, and that's what I mean. It's going to be one route of two, isn't it? One or the other. But
you've got to get IDs out to everyone. You've got to make sure everyone has a bank account, and that's why I kind of go, CBDC just sounds like it's too hard in Nigeria, but maybe the WEF will come in and help them with some relief funds, or IMF, sorry, be like, here's $1 trillion to roll out CBDCs and social credit.
Yeah, I can't see Nigeria running out CBDCs anytime soon. I think that they're corrupt on a level that is just quite small, really. It's just a government that probably is run by the WEF, IMF from the outside, and they follow certain instructions. But I think any money that comes into those Nigerian government just gets straight away stolen straight from the top. I'm pretty sure they're just filling briefcases and walking out the door. It's just very rudimentary fraud. So I think their kind of plan to control everyone and get them locked into some digital currency for surveillance, I don't think they even need that, really. They have a whole country that is already in revolt. They've got people walking out the door.
They got 94% of the wealth in that country.
Exactly. I think the scam has already happened, hasn't it? They've already done it, and they're just it's about to close down, and they're just grabbing the last bits of stock that have got a little bit of value. I think the countries that really want to do it are the ones that haven't collapsed yet. Like Nigeria is essentially, it's over, right? Whereas you've got the Western countries, you've got Asia, and you've got America. They're still thriving economies that haven't collapsed yet. The money still has a value. So there's an argument to go.
It's the countries which are still slightly inclusive, as in there's some advantage. You know, you're not getting absolutely ruined. So like the US and the UK, no matter how much we moan about it, we are still inclusive. You still can get somewhere back. You still can rise up. Whereas Nigeria, it's completely extractive. Like literally everything is taken away from you one way or another, either through local gangs, local government. Well, they're one and the same, or the overall government. They'll inflate your money away.
So who knows? So my conclusion on that Nigeria one is just, I feel very sorry for anyone that lives in the country where the government is completely lost control. They're hyperinflating. It's just chaos at that point, and that's why Bitcoin is trading at a 200% premium in that country. You know, they're literally buying it for double the price. So it'd still be good value for them. So if they buy it and they hold it and they manage to survive, it's going to be tough. But as we know, you know, people always go. I think I got the comment the other day actually that Bitcoin's for rich people, and then you've got these people in Nigeria, right? Who knows how much money they have? I'd imagine it's very little, and they are buying Bitcoin at double the price that you can today. So these are the poorest of the poor, right? The small amounts of money they did have been hyperinflated. They're buying Bitcoin. And you have the nerve to go Bitcoin to rich people.
They're buying sats. And I think,
they're buying sound money. That's what they're buying.
Yeah, it's the unfortunate fact that they're being led down to something which should exist anyway. You know, we should have sound money. We shouldn't have had it taken away from us, but we have. And it's, you know, it's never going to be the rich countries. You're not going to get a Japan. You're not going to get America. You're not going to get the UK doing this immediately. It's going to be the countries which are struggling. So El Salvador, it's just El Salvador. It's still a country. It's Central African Republic. It's just Central African Republic. It's another country. They're just doing transactions in the biggest shopping mall in South Africa. It's just South Africa. It's another country. You know, and so on and so on. We're starting to see more and more dominoes. It is a very exciting time. And I think, you know, I didn't have the years of just unsustained growth, which I think you've seen, but I'm certainly seeing Bitcoin starting to move now, which makes it, you know, every time which you have this little doubt pop into your mind, you're thinking, we're going to get taken over CBDCs. You see things like this and you think, it's the time to be in. The best time is now. The next best time is tomorrow.
Yeah, because the thing is, not only is Bitcoin getting better, just fiat just continues to fuck itself, doesn't it? We don't even try and find negative fiat stories. These are just the headlines of fiat. These countries, what they're doing. It's not even like we're going, there's a really load of countries that are running fiat really well and are deflating their currency, and we're just ignoring them. There's not a single country in the world that's doing deflation. Every single country's doing inflation. It's just how
the
much.
CPI, the index is going up every year. You're not seeing deflation on goods. With advances in technology, advances in farming, if you had sound money, your shopping bill would be going down. But TVs are going down. It's TV because technological advances, whereas the fact is your TV should be a lot cheaper because it's cheap to make. But like your, carrots, your banana, your steak, etc., because they're getting advances in technology, so bigger tractors, pesticides, and so on, that should have gone down in price. It shouldn't be going up every year. And that's what people misunderstand.
Well, it's Jeff Booth's book, isn't it? Got the name of it, but
The Price of Tomorrow.
The Price of Tomorrow. That's it. Yeah, it's exactly that.
It's probably where it's come into my little brain from. Everything just kind of merges into one off everything which I've read. I never know where it's come from.
Yeah.
So our next story is basically Lebanon devaluing their currency by 90% Feb 1st. So it's all happened, and just to obviously the article just does it nicely, right? But so basically, there's 1,500. I think they actually do use dollars. What is their currency?
I think it's a pound. I think I read that somewhere.
Yeah, I saw
Yeah.
So
I wasn't too sure of that, but yeah, it's a pound. £1
So basically, £1,500 is now going to be increased to £15,000. So essentially, if you had £15,000 before, it's now got the spending power of 1,500. So they've just inflated the supply by.
But this isn't what they're just doing now. It's so they can actually fix back onto the dollar with an official rate. Because I think there's about 4 different rates. So they're just admitting what's happened. But this does seem like a very, how would you say, speculative rate from what I've read. It seems like it's far too high. So I don't think this is the end of the story.
Yeah. But
I think it's going to be bumped down a few times.
But let's just imagine that you've worked all your life. You've got, let's say you got in GBG pounds, you got 200 grand in the bank. You're going to retire. You got some nice cruises out of that, presents for the grandkids. You're good to go. Your money's in the bank. It's all good. But as a Lebanese bank. So overnight with this one, your 200k would now have the spending power of 20k. In one day, they would just steal it. You'd end up with 10% left over. So now
I think when 90% always misleads it. When you say 90, it doesn't sound as severe. Whereas you think the money supply has inflated what would be 1,000%.
Yeah.
So let's put it that way. So another way is you've got 10% of the spending power. I think with 90%, it doesn't sound as bad as it is.
It's funny that devaluing currency by 90% doesn't sound bad, but
it's just trying to put it.
Sounds pretty bad. 10%.
I feel in my head, but it just doesn't come across.
Yeah. Well, basically, if you've got 200k, or let's say you've got 100k, you now have 20k or 10k of spending power at the end of it.
Yeah.
So instead of being able to buy like a nice boat, you can just buy an average car. That's what's happened to your money overnight. This is just what, like you said, this is just one thing. They've already fucked the money loads up until this point.
Well, no, this is
one additional change.
This is the repercussions of the money being fucked. So this isn't about they're just doing it now. This is them putting an official tag on it because they're still trying to pretend it was higher, but no one would exchange dollars. So this is them just putting a rate, but this kind of like admits what they've done. So this is the admission that they've devalued it. Well, they've inflated it by 1,000%. So how's that happened? It was basically years of basically printing a shitload of cash, no infrastructure investment. So sounds familiar. I don't think it's happened in the UK, has it? We haven't just been printing loads of money and not putting any infrastructure. We must have put a motorway between, I don't know, North and South Wales. We must have put a motorway down the. Oh, we haven't. What have we been doing?
We've got HS2 now, though.
Have we actually finished it?
Oh, no, we haven't. We didn't even start.
It's on its way.
And that's between. Oh, we've got one between London and Birmingham. We've got getting one between Birmingham. What about Newcastle, Manchester?
I know we've got the east to west. They've joined up the east and west now with some load of. Oh no, they didn't do that either, did they?
Yeah. It sounds awfully familiar when all this money's being taken away from inflation and taxation, and there's no infrastructure investments. Where's that money going? So
Boris looks pretty happy on his champagne lunches.
yeah, we talked about this a couple of stories ago. And we're saying, oh, it's Nigeria, it's Lebanon, it's happening here. Track and trace, what happened there? If you'd given me the money, the contract, I could have set that up and running with £1 million, and then you would have had to keep it going with whatever. But it cost us 32 billion. Where did the most of that 32 billion go?
I'd have done it for 30 billion. And I'd have stolen 29 of it.
But it wouldn't even cost you £1 billion. I think Ireland had a comparable system, and they had it up and running for 50 million.
Of course, like the second you get,
and that was overspent. That was overspent as well.
Of course, like literally, I don't think even people know how much like $1 billion is. It's 1,000 million. Like, what the fuck? It's such a ridiculous amount of money.
You needed an app. You needed a call center for the track and trace.
Yeah, and they're all on minimum wage. Like
yeah, so you hire, I don't know, 1,000 people. You get an app developer. God, you could have done it for £1 million and have profit. Ooh, getting feedback there.
That's me.
So never luck, I'm gonna have to mute you.
Yeah, I was gonna say you need to mute one of your devices.
Don't.
No, you haven't.
No, I haven't.
Oh yeah, you've joined twice.
Yeah, you got your phone on and you got your laptop on.
Oh no, yeah, you go.
Yeah, so back to the point, we're seeing this in the UK, and the UK is meant to be one of the better countries for lack of corruption. On the corruption scale, it's happening. It's just happening a lot slower here than somewhere like Nigeria. We're one of the dominoes. We're just further along. We're going to get knocked over at some point.
Yeah. And I think we're more in line. I think because they got something to save. I think with Nigeria, because hyperinflation's already happened, and Lebanon, hyperinflation's already happened. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with the CBDC thing, because they just don't have an infrastructure for it. Like you said, people don't have bank accounts. It's going to be tough to roll that kind of thing out when people don't even have normal money. They literally deal in physical notes. That's how they do their day to day.
Yeah, people do have phones, but not everyone in Nigeria. So you've got to think the mobile phone, the amounts, it's very high because, it's the African way. It's where their bank account was bank credits and so on, but not everyone is. So you're not going to be able to tag everyone down. And I think with CBDCs, you've got to have 100% penetration. Going to one of the points which kind of backs up what I've said, the IMF has favoured immediate unification of rates and said Lebanese authorities should deal up front with an estimated 70 billion in financial sector losses, widely viewed as a result of decades of profligate spending, corruption and mismanagement. So as we said, taxing, inflation, spending the money on whatever they want, siphoning it out. Oh, where do our taxes go? What do all these consultancy companies come in for? Why do their execs earn £1,000 a day?
I think they help the homeless. But yeah, I was just trying to bring it back to the UK then, because our next story is based in the UK, and as we know, they're probably going to try and push us onto some CBDC. It's why they're trying to say the UK is cryptocurrency friendly. It is Bitcoin friendly. But in reality, what they mean is it is CBDC friendly. And they've come up with a nice little name for our CBDC. It's called Britcoin.
But I thought digital currencies, crypto, were rat poison. I thought they were just terrible because not everyone has internet. I thought you couldn't use them. So why would we be rolling one out from the government?
Yeah, I think because it's a government blockchain, I think every time you send a transaction, someone strokes a puppy.
I thought you were going to say that Rishi strokes his penis.
Oh, he probably does that as well. But that wouldn't make me use it unless he live streams it. And then maybe
it's once again, you kind of go, what's the advantage? What is the advantage of having a CBDC, so a central bank digital currency, to the consumer?
Yeah. Their argument is it's more efficient and it costs less to issue it and less fees to send it around. But yeah, I don't buy that, because obviously a lot of the fees that are incurred are in the banking system. So are you telling me we're bypassing the banks with CBDCs? Because it's literally called central bank issued currency. So I don't know where those fees are going. I would imagine the fees are still there. Is it easier to issue? Well, yeah, I guess to a certain degree. You don't have to print a load of notes, but they don't print a lot of the money that exists in fiat countries now doesn't get printed anyway. It's literally noughts and ones on a spreadsheet.
It's once again that question: how are they going to cope with, I don't know, 85-year-old Rita who doesn't have a mobile phone? Is it something which are going to have a dual currency?
I think shock horror. I think maybe let Rita fucking rot.
What do you think? But then, how are you going to virtue signal? Will be people on their Instagram taking selfies of Rita while she's KO'd on the floor.
Because Rita hates the environment, so she deserves to die a cold, lonely death. She didn't even have her pronouns on Facebook listed, so Rita was a Nazi.
And I bet she didn't even display her carbon score.
I heard that she only displayed the Ukraine flag for 3 months. We know 6 is the acceptable limit. She deserves to die.
I suppose it's one of those ones, like, they'll run a duel, won't they? And they'll get it until they kind of press people out of using the cash. So they'll put advantages in place of using a CBDC. So everyone will have it imprinted on their phone.
Yeah, and I think you'd be surprised as well. There's a lot of old people now. Like, they've all got their iPads. They've all got their phones. Right? All the old people I know are...
I suppose the old people are... I suppose they are starting to be our parents now rather than our grandparents, and our grandparents weren't digital at all.
No, yeah, it's our parents really are them now, and because the thing is, like, because they are elderly as well, and especially during the whole pandemic, that really helped them force everyone that didn't know how to not use cash. It forced them all into their iPad, into the phone, how to use your banking, because everyone suddenly had to pay their bills using their iPad and their iPhone. And
so how do you think your parents would what would they think about adopting CBDCs?
Well, they just click the button, yes, I agree, and of course they would.
Is that because they're status cooks?
I'd go further and say it's not only because they didn't know, but they had no choice. A lot of them, if they wanted to get a doctor's appointment or something, it needed to be done online. So they had to do these things. So it's kind of like forced by design, and also kind of forced to, if you want to continue working here, you're going to have to take this little vaccination, aren't you? So it will be coercively forced in the nicest way possible with these pretty incentives and bells and whistles.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
I'll be keeping my stack.
Add to the stack, keep stacking.
The only thing I really care about this is the time frame. I think at the moment it's still a while off. So it's just one of those where they're just issuing it around, they're beta testing things here and there. But the good thing about government, even though they're corrupt and they're very, very good at starting wars and spending money, they're absolute bollocks and shit at rolling out an actual software technical project.
Yeah.
So this is the thing, because they've filled their government full of highly paid, incompetent people. When they actually want to do something that is, no, we're not trying to fuck this one up. We're not pretending to be incompetent like we normally do. We're meant to do this one properly now. CBDCs are actually a project we give a shit about. I know we fucked up healthcare, transport, freaking the education. Yeah, we did that on purpose. We don't give a fuck. But this one, we need it to work, because this is surveillance. This is the last stand, controlling of the money. This really needs to work, because if it doesn't, we can't get into this socialist state where we can monitor their carbon footprint and really, really control people. So this is the project we want to actually have it work. I don't think they can do it. I don't think there's enough people that they could
You're
pay.
right.
It would cost.
I mean, they
If it
can
costs them
even.
32 billion to do track and trace, it's going to cost them like 4 trillion to do a
Hmm.
CBDC.
I mean,
And I'm sure, I was going to say, I'm sure that there was about 87 different projects on the go in terms of CBDCs across the world when we looked at it once. And so someone will crack it. Potentially, China have cracked it already with their digital one. And so they may just adopt the same principles of whatever they've done, if, of course, they're happy to share, as to open source it.
I was just going to say, like, kind of like you talking about them failing IT projects. I remember them doing a doctor's one. I think it was GPs and joining it into NHS, into a central basic database. They couldn't install a piece of software on everyone's PC and link it up via a central server.
Mm.
That's the level of incompetence. And I think they spent billions doing it and failing.
Well, it's a good thought to have. What I also found from this article very interesting is, if I ever, and this is rare, but if I ever do go onto the Daily Mail, or typically sent an article, is reading the comments. And the top comment here is probably one of the ones that I would have liked if I'd have been on here. It's from Dan Gleedip. Well, here it is, folks. The start of what the Tinfoil Hat Brigade have been ridiculed for, suggesting for years, the birth of the UK CBDC and social credit system. You may not want it, but like COVID has proved, they can coerce you to want it regardless. It's frightening, really.
Dan Gleedip.
You got it.
Gleedip. Something makes me think. The next comment is no Britney Spears.
Oh, here we go.
And the one behind him is just called Spanish Guy.
I'm looking at the worst rated. So the thickest mice old farts will be up in arms. Oh, this one is saying no, that the world is moving on, leaving behind. Never mind. No one miss you, miserable old freeloaders. I don't even know why they freeloaders if they don't want to use CBDCs. Old people are strange. I came for a panic conspiracy tin hat. I wasn't disappointed. In my 20s, and generally can't remember the last time I used cash, so inconvenient, especially change. We'll be in the euro within 15 years anyway, and we need to go back, calling back to rejoin because our economy is so knackered. Most of the cash is electronic already. They're just very badly informed. Well, not even informed. They're badly educated. They need to understand the fact that the government will own a CBDC, whereas they don't. Well, they do own most of the money, but they don't truly own the whole system.
Yeah.
In the best rated one, I've actually seen a comment here where someone said, stick with cash, digital currency will be a credit system. You'll be told what to buy, how much you're allowed to buy, and credit cut if you don't comply. Someone's replied with, Bitcoin is the only one they do not control. And then he goes on to say a load of nonsensical things that I can't even read. But Bitcoin's actually mentioned that. Because that's the thing. I've seen the majority of people that hate CBDCs, and it's a little bit like what Mrs. No Show was talking about when you've got a masseuse that hates the credit system, believes in the Great Reset. A lot of people that are in that mindset go, "Oh, cash is king. Let's just kind of stay out of the system a little bit, accept cash, trade in cash. Just don't make your transactions too digital, so you can kind of go under the radar to a certain degree." But that doesn't get you out and get you away from the inflation of the side of what you're doing, because you're assuming that the money you're trading with is still going to be worth money in the future. And that's the problem. It's not going to be. So you need to get into something that is still not tied to your physical identity, but also will hold its value. And that is Bitcoin. That's the bit that I think a lot of people are missing, that cash is not the answer to tackle CBDCs. It's Bitcoin. The answer is right in front of us.
One comment that I wanted to just touch on as well was, Santander in Poland started sending letters to people who spend too much money on coal. Total control. You imagine if this will be digital currency, they will stop you using this money to buy more coal.
Do you want to have a little chat with Ray?
Ah, you know how we were talking last week, and again, apologies to the viewers with my shady internet. I think we're back on and we're showing a strong blue light from BT, who will be getting a phone call from me in the morning.
It's 2 weeks on the
It's
trot.
yeah, exactly. It's like losing our friend Nick Battier from Layered Money, because you're a smart guy. You know, when it comes to fiat, and obviously I've read Ray's latest book, which is The New World Order. He's spot on with it, but where he's failing is his understanding of Bitcoin. First of all, saying that it was like 12 years old, I was just like, "Oh, you've lost me already, Ray." Like when he was talking on Squawk Box.
I think there's a big difference between Ray and Nick. Nick gets it. Nick's been bought. You know, I just can't come up with any other conclusion which explains what he wrote. Whereas Ray Dalio, he's never said he believes in Bitcoin. He doesn't get it. He's old. I think it's just it's one of those
came out with it
divides.
last year. Last year, he said that he does understand it. Well, not I say he understands it. You know, he switched from the classic, if we use the Charlie Munger phrase, rat poison, to no, yeah, it's there. You know, I've got a small proportion of my, you know, personal wealth of 19.1 billion of what he's on, not what he used to earn as, you know, the world's largest hedge fund manager.
Should we play
He's in
30
there.
seconds? It's a 2-minute clip. We'll obviously link to it. If we play the
Let's
first
do it.
30 seconds, you'll get a good taste of where Ray is, because he clearly is not a Bitcoiner in this clip. He is
He's
so
not in this clip.
I thought he had 1% in.
Yeah. He was. I'll find the clip while you play that clip.
Okay.
It's been, quite amazing that for 12 years it's accomplished it. But I think it has no relation to anything. Okay. In other words, it moves, it has no relation. It's a tiny thing that gets a disproportionate attention. You know, the value of Bitcoin is less than a third of the value of Microsoft stock. And you could go into industries, biotech and many other industries are more interesting than Bitcoin. It's not going to be an effective money. It's not an effective storeholder wealth. It's not an effective medium of exchange. But we are in a world in which money as we know it is in jeopardy, right? We're printing too much, and it's not just the United States, all the reserve currencies, what's going on in Euroland, what's going on in yen. And so in that world, the question is, what is money and how's that going to operate? I think the question.
So there we are.
I think it's later. He talks about he wants something to fluctuate with inflation. So yeah. I think his brain is too fixed to the dollar. And I think that's possibly just having a think about what he's saying there and looking at my notes. He wants it to be linked to inflation. Why do you need something to be linked to inflation when you can stop inflation?
It's Keynesian, isn't it? Keynesian economics to go, you need inflation to have a growing economy.
Yeah, but he's going, we must have the dollar, which inflates. Therefore, I must have an anti-inflation asset. And it's like we should have some crypto which goes against inflation. Why don't you just go, no inflation? And here's something which can't be inflated. And if you have it as a central currency, therefore it becomes stable because it has its use. You know, he's talking about things being too volatile, but why is it being too volatile? Because it's finding its place in the market. So I'm going back to, I think his problem is that he is too old and he is too stuck on the dollar.
I would go one step further and go, I think he's paid off. I think he gets it. And this whole thing, like his whole little shtick there, it actually reads quite similar to what Nick Battier did last week, where he like obviously he didn't throw Bitcoin under the bus, but he did suggest that the dollar is very strong and we need something to peg to it. Ray just says all that, but then also goes, oh yeah, Bitcoin's too volatile. It's not a good medium of exchange, not a good store of value, with no proof points whatsoever. Like store of value over what time period, Ray? Like over the last 1 year? No. Okay, fine. I'll give you that one against the dollar. But over the last 5 years, fantastic store of value. Over the last 14 years since inception, the best store of value of any asset on the globe. So he's clearly means over the last year, which is just cherry picking a time frame, right? And because the US dollar has not been a good store of value. If you had dollars from a year ago, or from 100 years ago, and you fast forward to today, you've lost 99.7% of your wealth because you just held the money and it's inflated completely out of your reach. You know, $10 then would have been enough for a house. Now $10 isn't enough to buy yourself a coffee. So I just think he's been so disingenuous in this little clip that I just think, oh, Ray, I think he was one of the guys that we kind of had on our team. It felt like he was a Bitcoiner because I think he found it naturally. He realized currencies were going, and I think obviously he's done got a lot of good press over the last year when he's put out his books and his articles about this transition. It looks like the US is falling, and his prediction was China was going to take over and all that kind of good stuff. And Bitcoin looked like it was almost his underdog to go, this exists as well. You'd be silly not to put 1% of your portfolio into this thing because Bitcoin can win. And I swear I remember him having seriously considered thoughts on Bitcoin. Yeah. And now when I listen to him now, it's like he discovered it yesterday and he's going, oh, it's just a load of shit. And I go, Ray, you didn't unlearn that. You didn't forget it. You've now learned a new set of bullet points and you're just parrot speaking it on TV because I think you've been paid a lot of money by people that have a big interest in the US dollar maintaining its value. And now you're shitting on Bitcoin and this is your declaration that you're not on Team Bitcoin, you're on Team US dollar. And that's fine. You've been bought, you've been paid off. Fuck you.
I think Ray's going through a transitionary period, just like inflation. Because previously he was saying that cash is trash. And then he's flip-flopped to then saying, well, cash is good and it's a decent asset to hold.
That was because when he was saying cash is trash, we're going through massive inflation, assets were going through the roof. So it was devaluing. Whereas at the moment,
we know that these cycles that have happened, which Ray is the person to have pointed out the cycles, he wasn't specifically stating at this moment in time, cash is trash. He was just simply stating it carte blanche. So there's a difference, isn't there? And Ray, when he gives his answers, I've always noted that he's not happy just giving you a one-sentence answer. It is full-blown with Ray. And, I've seen him properly say, no, let me finish and let me get it out there. So he knows exactly what he's talking about. When he's talking, so I went away and watched this article, which again is all articles that we cover on the Bitcoin, on the 4Bs we link to. He talks about it sorry, I'm just going back to my point. He goes back to it and he references it about being in the 13th cycle since 1945. So he knows all about cycles. Yeah. But he wasn't saying this before.
Yeah, I think when people don't make sense and they start contradicting themselves, if they're smart people, it's not by accident. Because smart people don't do that. Smart people are very consistent because they always go back to first principles and then they build up from there. So it's very hard to completely contradict yourself on a core point when that's the way you think. And Ray is one of those guys. And now he's contradicting himself completely, going against a lot of the core things that he has come out from. He doesn't trust, he verifies. And now suddenly, always thinking is modeled up. And you go, he's been told to say this now. Right? This is why this interview that lasts just this 2-minute clip doesn't align with the stuff he's been putting out over the last decade. There's a reason it contradicts it, because the person that he's criticizing has told him, fucking stop criticizing me, which is the US dollar.
Mr. Orlin, it's actually ironic that his previous best-selling book was actually called Principles. He is the guy that runs his life from principles.
Yeah, and to be fair, up until now, I believe it.
Yeah,
because he was one of the very few very big public billionaires that is largely in the financial system that was extremely critical of the US dollar, suggested that the Chinese yuan is going to take over and Bitcoin had a chance as well.
I was clear to check his DNA if he wasn't Chinese in some way, shape, or form. He didn't seem American. He was anti-America.
Well, the thing is, though, he isn't biased anyway. That's what I liked about Ray, right? He's just looking at the data and going, based on what's happened before, based on the data that's happened over the last 50 years, the likelihood is this happens between China and America. And at some point, the global currency will also switch. And he was throwing in that Bitcoin could be the thing that takes over as well. China, as a country, is going to have the majority of the power. But what money are we using? It could be Bitcoin. That was his thesis. And now he's thrown all that in the bin. And now America's great. Everything needs to be pegged to the dollar. Inflation's great. And you go, Ray, you sound like a 2-bit economist that's been brought and paid for straight from university now. It's sad to see.
Do you think these guys are falling on hard times? Nick more so, obviously, because Nick's nowhere. I think Ray was, last time I checked, like 75th richest person in the world. So he's good.
It's the carrot or the stick, right? You got to remember, like with when someone's as high up as Ray, there's a lot of things you can hold over him, right? It won't be monetary probably, but it'll be access to people, access to events. It'll be meetings he's invited to. It'll be things that his kids, opportunities, jobs, and
setting up a legacy which will never be forgotten.
Yeah, or there could be a transgression. There could be a rape allegation. There could be anything that is in his past. Will be a real shame if that was to come to light, Ray. But just say this and it all goes away. Or this. Unfortunately, these guys, the people that control the US dollar, do control the world. So even for someone like Ray, when he's talking out against it and being almost like this figurehead of, this is the guy that people trust, and he's saying the US dollar's falling, China, the country, is growing, and Bitcoin has a chance, that's a voice you need to silence. So they find their way. They'll find a lever that gets him convinced to walk that back and go, don't worry, we're not going to make you freaking walk too much back, but you just need to say, when you get asked about Bitcoin, these are the 5 bullet points you say now. Yeah. And he's saying them, and they don't tie back to any of his previous work. It doesn't make any sense. It's just this nonsense built on top of a sound foundation. You go, where did the nonsense come from? Why do you now have arguments that are sand? You had concrete points before, right?
I'm going to have to listen to some clips and videos from Ray to look at his previous statements around Bitcoin, because
it's in the chat, so we can always come back.
I've saved the video. To have a watch, because I'm trying to think what he said about Bitcoin. I look at his comments about cash and think it's just a short term, because he says relatively attractive. So I don't know if that's a complete and utter against, but with Bitcoin, I'd have to re-listen to what he says. And I'm quite fond of Ray, so I probably am thinking the positives about him. But I'll listen to some clips, see what he says previously, and kind of come back to it.
Cool.
Let's move on to Craig, Stephen Wright.
If we must. If we must. Satoshi.
Our Lord and Savior, Satoshi Wright.
Oh man, just imagine in some universe, in some parallel universe, Craig Wright is actually Satoshi. There's infinite universes, right? Infinite realities. So in one of them, Craig Wright is actually Satoshi. I bet even in that reality, no one believes that he's Satoshi. Because he's such a cunt. But yeah, so in this one, Craig's doing what he always does, right? He's just fucking suing people. He doesn't abide by this, a sovereign individual, just what will be, will be. He goes to court, and unfortunately, he's managed to win a case here against 16 Bitcoin developers, only to take it to trial. Like they wanted to take it to trial before. And essentially what he's doing is he's suing them for changing his Bitcoin. So all the forks and all the updates that have happened on Bitcoin and all the improvements that the Bitcoin developers have done over the last 14 years, he's claiming that is an egregious change to his perfect Bitcoin. And not only during all these changes, they hacked and stole 111,000 Bitcoin from him. So he wants them to admit that they changed Bitcoin incorrectly and they should put it back, and then to fork Bitcoin to a different version where he owns this 111,000 Bitcoin, which he already owns anyway on the existing chain, but for some reason he can't access it. So he wants them printed again on another fork.
Well,
and
he
given
wants
the
it
private key.
So I was trying to understand this, but he says that he owned it on Mt. Gox. He can't get it from Mt. Gox because he's locked out of the wallet, and he wants him to have this fork. So it's pretty much, there's no proof, but there's been, who is it? A guy called Danny Brewster, whoever it has, claims that a lot of that is his. So he's telling him to F off because I think he's claiming he's got, tens of thousands. It doesn't sound like he's claiming the lot. But basically telling Craig Wright they're not his. And so it's, if Craig Wright gets this through, he immediately faces a court case against Danny Brewster about ownership as well. But he's not going to get it through because it's like, you want to fork Bitcoin, you got to get all miners to agree.
Yeah, well, you don't actually. I could fork Bitcoin tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, but you'd end up with a fork which no one uses.
Exactly. So I would be happy to settle now with Craig and go, all right, fine, you win. We will fork Bitcoin and you can have that 111,000 Bitcoin and it's called BTF, whatever. And then he just goes off on his own little chain. And he has his 111,000 Bitcoin, all attributed to him, but the value of every coin is zero. So
exactly, you'd have to have users, and like we would with that fork, we would all have replicas of what we've got. I'm guessing.
Yeah. You would. Yeah, you would all have the same coin on there. What I think he means is that
I'd be trying to sell that as soon as I got it.
Convert.
Well, it was like a tax dividend when I've forgotten what they're called. Yeah, Bcash and BSV.
Yeah.
Bcash was a 10% dividend, and then when BSV launched, I think it was a 2% dividend. Because they just gave you the coins for free, you dumped them.
What year were they launched? It's probably before our time.
2017, I think.
Yeah, I think I went in 2018, so unfortunately I missed the free.
It was great. I think what Craig would probably want is he wants to play a version of Bitcoin, just the same version, BTC, and I think he just wants the one change to be is that the private key for this Bitcoin is given to him.
But isn't he?
But this is the thing, isn't it? What shows and is very telling is that whenever he's suing, or in this case, what he's pursuing is Bitcoin. He's not asking anyone for BSV or BSV Gold or anything like that. He's after Bitcoin, and it's a trait that I've also seen from like the FBI when they're seizing Bitcoin and anybody else in terms of these scammers. They aren't after all of these shit coins. So there must be amongst the board of everybody a true belief that, right, whilst everything else is going on, Bitcoin is the one that we want. Why isn't anybody trying to hack Ethereum or, again, StickDix, one of your favorites, stock to even 10%? Everybody wants.
But it's pure money focused, isn't it? So, but I think, Mr. Orlin's perfectly right here. Get the developers, fork it. We'll ignore court. We'll fork you a version. There you go. Fuck off. But then again, he'll just try and do it again when it turns out to be worth zero.
Yeah, weirdly, he wants to flex and try and get some court somewhere just to give him a case. Because he's obviously already starting to lose the cases where people have called him a fraud and people in court cases are dismissing it. This is just another court case. And really, I think even what he wants, even more than money, is just for him to be acknowledged in some shape or form that maybe he's Satoshi and therefore he's owed a load of Bitcoin. And then I don't even know what he thinks he's going to do with that, because everyone goes, if some random judge went, oh yeah, like let's just say he wins this and they have to fork it and they go, yeah, he in some shape or form he was involved in the creation of Bitcoin and he got these coins hacked, then what?
I
Your
saw
power in Bitcoin doesn't grow. Like no one gives a shit about you. Like it's just some judge that got it wrong.
I saw a thread around Huddle Not Put just taking a piss out of Craig Wright as usual. And Craig Wright's sugar daddy replied to it, Calvin Ayre, is it?
Calvin Ayre, the pedo.
And he's just like, oh yeah, well, you'll get your day, blah blah blah. And he put a reply, and it was just he got fucking crushed. He's just like, we all know he's a right Satoshi, and he just went bang. Here's a court telling him that he's a pile of nonsense, and it was just like no response from the sugar daddy man.
Yeah, it's just a shame, right? Because I see people like Corey Fields, Peter Todd, Peter Woolley. They're all listed in this court case. And these are proper Bitcoin core developers. They're doing really good, hard work on Bitcoin, and they're getting their time wasted with this bollocks. And yeah, it's sad that people like Craig exist in this world just to do this, and he's just got nothing better to do, you know. And he even forked his own coin called fucking BSV. I'm pretty sure in that fork, I think he gave himself Satoshi's coins. I think he gave himself 1 million BSV or something, which was Satoshi's coins. He just gave them to himself. It's his own fork. So it's like you've got your little pretend version of Bitcoin where you're Satoshi and you have the coins. Just fuck off and stay there. But like you said, Senebaluk, it doesn't matter, does it? Because no one's paying attention to BSV. It's a fucking dead coin. It's down 99.9%. So he's come back to Bitcoin going, I want some of this. I want some BTC. Like, of course you do. Because this is the real Bitcoin, not your shitty shit coin.
Yeah. I imagine he's probably got a shitload of cash because he was relatively early into the crypto arena.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not like he struggles. So I think you're right. It is about the notoriety, about the fame, about everyone thinking he's some kind of genius.
I mean, ego as well.
Yeah, I think he's a psychopath or a sociopath, and he just craves adulation and respect. Like he's got the money, but it's not worth anything unless millions of people just respect and adore him, and he's just craving that. And he thinks by winning a court case that proves in some shape or form like he's got this Bitcoin or he's Satoshi, suddenly the world will finally acknowledge that Craig Stephen Wright is a genius and everyone will just love him. And it's obviously not going to happen. If he wins a random court case, all the Bitcoiners are going to go, well, it's a dumb judge. We don't respect that decision. Go fuck yourself. He's chasing a rainbow, but I just wish he'd fucking stop because he's distracting good people from hard work, and he just needs to fucking drop it.
Yeah, I suppose the problem is if they do create a new fork, he'll just keep on coming back.
Oh yeah, I think he's literally got dozens of cases against dozens of people. Just every week a different one kind of hits the press. It's just which one is he talking about now? He's all over the place with it, and you know what he's trying to do. He's just trying to. It doesn't matter if you lose 99 cases. If you win one, then that just overwrites the 99, doesn't it? It's like I in a court of law, this and this got proven, so therefore that is true, right? You can never say that I'm not true because in a court of law it got proven correct. And
despite the 99 defeats.
Yeah, you ignore the 99 times you got called a fraud, a liar, not Satoshi. But if one judge in one jurisdiction in one place suggests he might be Satoshi somewhere, he'll hang on that one and go, see, I fucking told you.
Yeah, he's like the kamikaze, isn't he? He's like ready to go down with the ship, fighting to the end. So I don't think it'll be the last that we hear from him. It's like, as I said before we started recording, that supervillain that just keeps on coming back. He is like the Bitcoin Dr. Robotnik to Sonic.
Yeah. Every level you think you've killed him, and then he comes back and he's back in a new kind of little spaceship. You got to dunk his head again.
Exactly. That's him. Crave.
Oh, sweet.
Right.
Last story of the week.
Right. Well, this is actually something that I know I've spoken to you both about, which is putting your words into pictures, which allows you, so your seed phrase into pictures, which allows you to be able to remember them a lot easier in the event that all of a sudden you need to get out. Now, we've got the bitmap 39 words, which is over what, 4,000 different words and phrases which make up your seed phrase. Remembering them, whether it's 12 words or 24, is difficult. But this guy here thought, you know what? I'm going to make a picture and I'm going to share that picture online, and none of you will ever get what my pictures mean in terms of the 24 words. You wanna go on?
Yeah, well, the first comment, like, obviously, this is very clever because it's one of them, right? Okay, great. I like the idea. Put your seed word. He's decided 12 words, by the way, not 24. So straight away, he's chosen half the security that he could have had. And because a lot of these hardware wallets allow you to choose between 12 and 24 words. Why you pick 12, I don't really know. Just pick 24. It's more secure. And then he's decided to draw a nice little picture, take a and then take a photo of it and put it on Reddit and say, this is my 12-word seed phrase and pictures. So the first comment is, second rain, 8 live, window shoe, pink, axe, arrow, fox, umbrella, beer. And as people have pointed out, some of those words have to be wrong because they're not in the BIP 39 list. But in the comments below that, they can't only go, yeah, beer isn't, but this one is. And so before you know it, they pretty much have the 12 words. So you can see in the comments, the guy doesn't seem to be trolling. He's gone, oh, everyone's trying to guess my words. They're getting quite close. So he's moved the Bitcoin out, and he says he's left a few sats in that account. So when someone does guess it, they get a little bit of Bitcoin. But fortunately, he managed to move the majority of his Bitcoin before someone guessed it, because putting your seed phrase online is next level dumb.
It says seeing 9 commentators in here almost the whole time with no new comments being added. I'm assuming someone is trying to crack it as we speak. I've moved on a minute, except a little, so you actually get it. If it as a reward. New wallet, I won't share the pictures with the internet. Lol.
Yeah, this is this reminds me of when my brother was first doing his backup of a seed wallet, and he wanted to kind of flex and or be like nice and neat about doing the 24 words. He went, oh yeah, and he was in work doing it. And he's like, oh, I'm going to type them out and print it. I won't just write it. And I just went, do not put it into the computer and print it on a work computer. You work for the NHS. These computers have all joined up. You've massively He's like, oh, but it'll be neater. My handwriting. I'm like, just stop now. Just stop. Put everything fucking down and stop. It's just, and I just have a sense that this is what this guy's doing here, right? He's kind of going, oh, I've got a clever way of saving my 12 words. Like, here it is. And he wants to show it. He wants to go, look how much work I've done. I haven't had to write my 12 words, but yeah, I know what this is, but you don't. And everyone looks at it and goes, you're a fucking idiot. I know what that says. Or give me an hour and I know what it says. So sometimes when you're proud of your security that you've done with your Bitcoin, be careful about how you share it, because if you're sharing the actual one, like when I saw this, I went, oh, clearly this is a troll post. But then I read his comments, I go, no, I think this is actually his genuine 12 words on the screen. I think he had probably the majority of his net worth behind these pictures, and he's lucky that it was abstract enough to just take someone an hour or so to crack it. So he had enough time to move it, because he was very close to losing all his Bitcoin by flexing how good he thinks his security is, which may have been great until he shared it with our Bitcoin. Jesus, maybe if a normal person stumbled across this picture, they'd have never got it. Even if they'd got the words, they wouldn't know what to do with the words. Put it in our Bitcoin and tell someone it's 12 words. Well, we're going to get it. Because like you said, there's only 4,000 words it can be. So yeah, he's done some pictures here. It wouldn't take you long to get 12 words out of that.
I mean, ultimately, what you could do is if you've got the 12 pictures, putting it in a different order. And then,
You've got to remember that order, don't you?
Yeah, but then you've got to remember that order yourself. And then it's kind of like, oh my God, I've made the hiding place too secure.
Yeah. I like the idea of a story, right? So it's if you had the whole story, but in reality, I just don't know. I'm someone who just likes to keep it simple. So I think having just the 12 or 24 words largely written down or stamped on a tiny seed, and just keeping that thing very, very safe, and knowing where it is, I think is probably best, because obviously the reason why we use tiny seed and all that kind of stuff is in case of fire and flood, your backup seed will be still okay. Obviously, this photo is of his seed on a scrap of paper here, right? So where's this bit of paper going? Yeah, and no matter probably where you put this, in the case of fire and flood, this isn't surviving. So now what? Yeah, it's why we put it on fireproof steel. Yeah. That's one of the reasons why we use a backup seed that we do. But obviously, number one is that it will get found by a random person looking around your house. But number two is, if you do have a fire and flood, does your net worth go up in flames because it's just your 24 words are written on a bit of card, or was a picture on an A4 bit of paper? That's very, very risky. It should be on a fireproof bit of steel that has some indication of how to return your word. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of writing pictures. I'm a fan of doing this in your head, having your words and creating a story and then remembering it that way through a story. I'm not a fan of writing this down unless you can write this down on steel in some shape or form. And
also, as we've said before, and I know that your backup is Young MBA as an alternative. It goes back to trust. Maybe you have to find someone that you trust to also share the secret with.
He's also a shitcoiner looking for his post history. He's talking about what would be the best way for a naive person to make money in crypto, and he said 125 times by leverage or something like that. I was just like,
I'm a trader then, isn't he? Yeah.
I do love when Dr. Evil 10% goes off on a little research, because we were quiet for a minute and I wasn't too sure if we've lost him, his internet's gone, or he's just fallen asleep and bored with the pod. But his disgust that you come back with of, it's a shit coiner.
Here we go. So how would you respond to a crypto naive person who asks you how to make money from crypto? Start them out on 125 times by leverage for futures. Then he's talking about...
that's a troll post. That's clearly troll.
I don't know, because he's talking about like USDT coin and gambling using crypto. He's a pure shitcoiner. So like,
because advising someone that's brand new to crypto, go 100 times leverage, like that's just funny. That's exactly what you don't do to a noob. Like, they get wrecked instantly.
Yeah, but I put money. It's probably he's being serious.
Yeah, it probably is a troll post, but it's just another good example to use. Drawing pictures of your seed words might be a good idea. Just don't take photos and send it to people and flex at how clever you are. Because if someone guesses right, you've lost all your money. So that was quite a big gamble, really, wasn't it? Maybe you don't want them to guess that.
Do you know what? I could see a film just when you were picturing your brother writing it on his laptop at work, and then it going into the servers of work, and then somebody else finding it. You could build a whole story and a film from it, couldn't you? Of where it goes, and then he's there trying to delete all of the history, and it's just like, oh gosh, it's never going to be deleted, and it's too late.
He's got to wipe the hardware wallet and start again. And I had to get him to promise me, like, look, it's fine if he did it, just tell me and we'll reset it. I think I reset everything anyway. I just didn't trust him. I was like, I'm not even going to take your word for it. I think you did it, didn't you? So I'm doing it again. I reset his ledger. Did it all again. But it's
right. Well, should we end it there on young MBA's potential fuck up, Mr. All-In, aka the $1 trillion man's lack of trust for young MBA? Dr. Evil 10% was here and is always here, second highest attendance, may I say, and myself, Sir Neverlook, aka the excellence of execution. The highest attendance amongst the 4Bs of us, but one person that doesn't have any attendance today, last week, the week before, and many weeks previously before that, is Mrs. No-Show, aka No-Show. So that was pod number 85, brought to you by the 4Bs. Peace.